about how Reagan had cut and run from Lebanon, how that might be a good idea. And this guy commented, and he says, "We have been at war with Iran since February 1979. They have been fighting. We have been idiots." So 1979 is when the Shah that we installed in 1953 in cahoots with MI6 and us through the CIA through a coup d'etat. That's when that ended. The Iranians, not the right person got in power. I don't think all the Iranians were happy, but put in power the Ayatollah. I forget the name of the first Ayatollah.
Grand Ayatollah Khomeini.
Isn't that the current one?
I think they kind of just passed the title.
Okay. Cool. I thought there was a Sistomani. Anyway,
maybe, man. There's a
big Ayatollah.
There's a Grand Ayatollah Sistani out of Iraq, and that's who I've had almost damn. I've seen him in person on a battlefield. So like,
really?
Yeah, dude. That's what happened with the Battle of Najaf. The whole battle. Battle of the.
I assumed it was his forces. I didn't assume it was him.
Yeah, he comes into town after we're told stand down, right? Mm-hmm. Stand down. Muqtada al-Sadr is in the shrine. You had the Grand Ayatollah al-Sistani come in, and he's held up as this great guy who's brokered a peace, basically saved all their asses because they were about to get wiped off the earth until DC said, we're not going to do that. We're going to let these guys go. Right. So, at any rate, just point of clarification.
That's very good. So the Ayatollah, Khomeini, or something else maybe. And my first reaction to we've been at war since Iran since 1979 is, well, that doesn't seem that accurate because in 1953, like we overthrew their government, which seems pretty warish in my book. So I tell the guy, "You mean 1953, right?" ? And he gives me this gem that has made me laugh. Like, I'm still laughing. It's been over 24 hours. He says, "Banks Wise, no. From 1953 to 1979, they were our allies." And my friends, I don't think he understood how funny and that comment was. That why were they our allies for those 7? Can't do math.
Right.
18 years.
Yeah.
No, 28 years. Because we installed our puppet. Our puppet is our ally because he's us.
Yeah. He's our guy that we thought we could control in the region so that basically BP and the Crown could end up with a whole bunch of damn oil out of Iran. Go back and listen to episode 97. It explains all of this.
97. I'll link that as well. But I mean, that is where a lot of these people, and I'm not putting them down.
They just don't know, man.
I don't like their conclusions, but I think that a lot of their conclusions are driven by either ignorance or fear or something else. I don't know what the other ones would be. Ignorance or fear, I assume, covers most
those two are
or some arrogance, probably some tribalism because they're part of a team and they have to defend that team.
Here, can I say something real quick about that? I'll probably say it again at some point.
Sure.
Damn it, man. Trump doesn't care about you. I know you. There are so many of you like, oh, I love Trump. I love him. I love him. I love him. I love Trump. Dude, that guy doesn't give a damn about you. Personally, he really does. Like, I'm not saying he doesn't have a heart. I'm not saying he doesn't do some acts of kindness. I'm not saying he doesn't even carry out some charity. Like, I'm not that naive, okay? And I'm not gonna but your blind dedication and reverence and faith in this dude who's a man is misplaced.
Well, there's an interesting word you use there. You use blind reverence or blind. Did you say allegiance or reverence?
All of it, yes.
All of it, cool. Is an interesting word because I would contend that you should have that for almost nobody, if not nobody. Because
nobody.
As soon as you give them blind allegiance, it's still that other person's responsibility, but it gives them an incentive to not care about you. In the same way that the Republican Party doesn't care about most of the Republican voters, and the Democrat Party doesn't care about most of the Democrat voters because they have stated implicitly and explicitly sometimes, I'll vote whatever happens. I'll vote for the guy, whatever happens. Doesn't matter.
Straight ticket. Good.
at that point, they know that they don't have to act correctly. There's no more signal. And so blind allegiance is a very dangerous thing to give because the other side has no more incentive.
It's almost self-fulfilling prophecy bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, when you remove any type of accountability from a dude and you're just going to sit there and say, he's my guy, man. Given either or, this is my lesser evil, you've done the same thing. So you got into Facebook a little. You don't want to continue down that. You want to get into history a little bit first.
I thought we'd get into history, Constitution, some quotes from the Founding Fathers, and then after that, some quotes from the public officials.
Here we go. You want to do public officials first? Or you want to get into this first?
That first, then public officials.
Okay.
Jump around.
Let's jump around a little bit. The Founding Fathers of the Constitution and the war power. This is one of those things I wish was taught in government indoctrination. Of course, it's not, because then you couldn't do things like what we did the other day and have people go, yeah, Trump.
It is, but on the superficial level.
Oh, so
that we
lame.
love the Constitution. We just can never go further than, the Constitution's awesome.
I have a myriad. I can never. Myriad. I have so many more quotes than every other president that ever is. This
not bad.
This Alexander Hamilton, okay? Alexander Hamilton, big government guy back in the day. The guy was an asshat. However, he got this right. And Hamilton and Madison, man, you want to talk about some big fights among the Federalists. Even among the Federalists, they had giant fights. This was one of their fights. Madison ended up bringing Hamilton around. Hamilton wanted to give the president a lot more capability than Madison ever did. The anti-federalists, you can call him president all you want. He's king. But, you idiots. God, I wish they would have listened. Alexander Hamilton, quote, "The president is to be the commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States. It would amount to nothing more than the supreme command and direction of the military and the naval forces as first general and admiral of the Confederacy, while that of the British king extends to declaring of war and the raising and regulating of fleets and armies, all of which, by the Constitution, under the consideration, should or would appertain to the legislature." That is from Federalist 69 in 1788. He goes on to say, quote, "The Congress shall have the power to declare war, the plain meaning of which is that is the peculiar and exclusive duty of the Congress, when the nation is at peace, to change the state into a state of war." That's Hamilton, the big damn government guy, telling you that this rests with the Congress alone. All right? Thomas Jefferson, if you know your history, he was the guy that finally confronted the Barbary pirates. We were paying them ransom for, basically bribe money. Don't attack our ships. They're trading over there for a long, long time. And that's where the United States Marines came from in the first place, to repel the Barbary pirates in Tripoli. So James Madison goes, quote, "The power to declare war, including the power of judging the causes of war, is fully and exclusively vested in the legislature. The executive has no right in any case to decide the question whether there is or is not cause for declaring war." This is 1793. "The Constitution supposes what the history of all government demonstrates, that the executive branch of the power, the executive is the branch of power most interested in war and most prone to it. It has accordingly, with studied care, vested the question of war to the legislature." That was a letter to Jefferson in 1798 from James Madison. James Madison is the father of the Constitution. Okay? He is given a ton of credit for this. This guy, as a Federalist, is telling you once again that there is absolutely no gray area here whatsoever. This power does not rest, because history has shown us, and in the future supposes exactly what history has shown us.
But Shane.
But
1979.
1979?
Yeah, 1979 and 2001. We passed an AUMF on the War on Terror.
I will get there. I've got a couple more quotes by some pretty upstanding, people that I think, especially, the people on the progressive right, still kind of, I don't know, it resonates with them. This is William Patterson, the framer of and Supreme Court Justice. Okay, it is the exclusive province of Congress to change the state of peace to a state of war. That was United States versus Smith in 1806. George Washington, quote, "The Constitution vests the power of declaring war in Congress. Therefore, no offensive expedition of importance can be undertaken until after they shall have deliberated upon the subject and authorized such a measure." 1793. Last, James Wilson, framer and ratifier. "The system will not hurry into war. It is calculated to guard against it. It will not be the power of a single man or a single body of men to involve us in such distress. For the important power of declaring war is vested in the legislature at large." That was to the Pennsylvania Ratifying Convention in 1787. This was all sold. The Constitution was all sold on this and the Bill of Rights. I don't understand for the life of me exactly your question.
Well, so I'm trying to prompt you because some people will at least acknowledge what you say, but they'll come back with, well, in 1979 we passed, and I forget the name of that.
That's right.
It's the
War Powers Act.
The War Powers Act.
That's right.
And then since then we have passed multiple. The one that would, I guess, they're using right now is the 2001 AUMF on the War on Terror.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I've got another devil's advocate.
Sure. So constitutionally, I'm going to point everybody to this because, listen,
they keep on, like, we have had some pretty, like, insulting comments to cite our work.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing is, I can cite this in my head. I can point you, and I can reference this because it's so damn simple, and the framers made it simple. Who's complicated this? The state obviously has complicated this for their own gratification of power and lust and money and just empire, period. The media, the propaganda machines, now since 2014 when quote-unquote law was passed where they could propagandize against the American people.
Well, the media could already do that because we have freedom, and that's a good freedom.
Yeah. But now the U.S. government can do it. So now,
like they weren't doing it before, Shane.
Yeah, I know. What I'm just saying is, out in the open, they can do it now. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. Obviously, Article 1 covers everything legislature, right? This is a specific and enumerated and defined power. This is really important because in Federalist 45, Madison references that all powers are few and defined. Anything that's just a general clause, that's not a power. There's no open-ended power. Like
what about things that aren't even in the Constitution whatsoever?
Yeah, also not law.
So we don't have to prove a negative, you're saying?
No, and the negative is also true, right? If it's not listed, then it's not a power.
Correct.
Cannot be. So Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, to declare war, grant letters of marque and reprisal, and to make rules concerning captures on land and water. This is it. This is the clause that is enumerated and defined in the Constitution that gives the legislature the power to declare war, conclude peace, and negotiations and all that fun stuff. Now, let's get into more of the Constitution because this is probably even more important. This is what gives our argument backing that only the legislature can do this. We've already cited the people, the guys that argued and wrote it down in paper and agreed and signed their name and said, this is it. This is the compact that we're signing, also known as a contract between the states. Article 5 of the, I'm in the wrong section. Article 5 of the Constitution. For those of you guys that don't know, Article 5 of the Constitution is the only way to change the Constitution itself. Okay? Chris Ann Hall, and I'll give her all the credit in the world for discussing this, for teaching this. An absolute sage I don't know, I hate to call her a refounder. She's one of those people that has opened a ton of eyes to what actually happened in history. Article 5 is the only way, and it reads, the Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution or the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as parts of the Constitution when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the 9th section or the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. What does this mean? If they want to change the Constitution, they've got to have 2/3 of both chambers of the House, or I should say both chambers of Congress, or they've got to have 2/3 of the states ratify this compact or contract.
How many times has that been done?
I don't know. What are we up to? 26?
26 or 7?
26, 27. I want to put something in perspective for you people. The U.S. government, back in the day when they prohibited people from producing and consuming alcohol, passed an amendment. Why? Because they were never delegated the authority over alcohol or commerce, and so they knew that they had to pass an amendment. How did they repeal prohibition?
They passed an amendment.
Another amendment. So you would think if it's important enough, back in the day when we still had some statesmen in the 20s, if we still had some statesmen that took it that seriously as the prohibition of alcohol before we ever took a nation to war, it would have to be constitutional. So if we wanted to trade those powers or give those powers or the separation of powers to another branch, we would have to come up with an amendment.
You know what's weird is that now you can't buy or smoke cigarettes until you're 21.
Yeah.
And that same kind of line as alcohol has happened without an amendment, just a bureaucratic fiat.
Yep.
And while I would like to think that there were a bunch of statesmen that made sure that they followed the law back when prohibition was passed,
yep,
through an amendment at the very least, I would say the whole thing is illegal actually, because it's not in line with the Constitution itself. But whatever.
Yeah. No delegated authority.
I would actually argue that it's probably that those who wanted to impose their tyranny didn't think it was possible to do. Didn't like the concept of not doing it through amendment just hadn't come into their head enough. They weren't confident enough in their tyrannical desires.
Damn right.
More than statesmen pushing them back, unfortunately.
Damn right. You're gonna tell
and
them.
Now they're very confident in they're so confident in their tyrannical. They're like, we have decided. Some random stupid bureaucrat is like, we've decided that 21-year-olds can't smoke anymore.
And let's not sugarcoat it. We've decided that the American people are so damn stupid because of our government indoctrination system that we can finally get away with this crap.
Good point.
Lastly, the icing on the cake for all of this. This is profound. The catch-all within the United States Constitution, and I know some of you guys are going, God, Shane, enough. You guys say all the time that this is not, one of those. The Constitution isn't the end all be all. It's not.
It's a good thing to remind them about the tools that they can use to fight within the current world we live in.
Exactly right. At least you can reference this. This is Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution. This is paramount. What we did when the people formed the states, and the states formed the government, the federal government, right? You've got parties, you've got a contract or a compact, and you have the product. Again, I'm going to give Chrisanne Hall all the damn reverence in coming up with this argument, because I've never found an argument like this, nor have I ever, and it's straight from the Founding Fathers. It is straight from that time period, from the original writings. The Constitution has what some people will call a supremacy clause. Really, when the states became states, they were basically, what's the word? Self-entitled, they assume what all states can assume: war, peace, negotiation, foreign commerce. Georgia.
Okay, yeah, you usually say they were on par with like France and Spain and so forth.
Exactly. They were countries within themselves. They could go do all of those things. So when they came together and they said, we're going to have a constitution, this is our agreement, this is going to be the head of, the outward looking part of now a conglomeration, a confederacy of states, or a federal republic of states. You're going to handle these things for us, so we don't have to handle them. That also means the negative must be true. Georgia can't go out and declare war on, South Africa. We can't conclude peace. We can't go through treaties with them. We can't do any of those things as a state. We must let the feds do those.
War power. Or if you do it, the contract would be void.
Yeah, absolutely. So
the contract's void. There's no more government. Woohoo!
Yeah, those 5 things: war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce. Those are the powers delegated to the federal government. I don't care what you've been told in school. I don't. It's a government indoctrination center, and if you want to argue me on that, we'll have that discussion another time. Now, Article 6, Section 2, the Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall is not a permissive term, it is mandatory, shall be made in pursuance thereof. So all laws must be made in pursuance of the Constitution. That means that a War Powers Act, a piece of legislation that contradicts Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11, is void. It is notwithstanding. And same thing with treaties. Any treaty that America gets into, if it violates or is not within standing or pursuant to our Constitution, let's say we go into the UN and we say, hey, let's get into a treaty. You guys, your gun rights are gone. All right, Republicans, how much are you going to back up that treaty? Guess what? You don't have to. Article 6, Section 2 is sitting there right there for you to say, listen, that treaty isn't pursuant to our Constitution per Article 6, Section 2. It's notwithstanding. It's void. It's null. We don't need to have it. We don't need to listen to it. It's the same damn thing when you start to try to abdicate through legislation, which is a law or policy or whatever the hell you want to call it. That gets pushed right into Article 6, Section 2. If it's not pursuant to the U.S. Constitution, it's void. Same damn thing. AUMF, void. I tweeted it massively the other day. I said, instead of just sitting here and talking about repealing the AUMF, can't we just really get to the nuts and bolts of the whole damn thing? This whole thing, we've never seen an amendment to the Constitution that changes that. The product, which is the federal government, is not in control. The control is the contract, which is put together by the parties. And so unless the states or through the Article 5 amendment process, something changes those powers, those belong to Congress and Congress alone, as the framers stated. That is the easy case to make. It can dismantle any silly argument out there to where an executive can go out and start a war by himself.
I got one more.
Go ahead,
of what I've heard said way too many times, unfortunately. And this one, I think can be argued more with logic. But let's hear your constitutional take on it.
Sure.
But Shane, this wasn't an act of war. We just killed some people.
Boy.
With some pieces of metal.
So
high in the sky.
Let's do logic, right? First of all, constitutionally, let's talk about this because constitutionally, all these guys have said basically in a nutshell, in layman's terms today, one man should not be able to change the state of peace in America. How short-sighted and myopic and kingly. I actually put out a post about, you want kings? This is how you get kings. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. I don't care if it's George Bush. I don't care if it's Donald damn Trump. When you abdicate power arbitrarily to an executive where the legislature now has made itself irrelevant, and there are no checks and balances, and one man who has his finger as a commander-in-chief of the Navy and the Army of the United States of America can carry out an act of war. Listen, anything that ever touches another sovereign nation or a citizen of those sovereign nations, especially, and not that I have any more reverence for somebody in the government, that's an act of war. Sanctions are an act of war.
But if wars are fought by governments, because if not, we'd actually have less wars. There'd still be wars, but if wars are fought by governments, attacking the people who run those wars, which especially if you're a general, that's even more like in your face, seems like that would be an act of war.
Yes.
If not, how do you define war? Like, how many people do you have to kill?
No.
I would think that if there were a line, which there isn't really, somebody who controls the military of the other country seems like a very safe line to draw.
Here's the deal. Is it your son? Is it your daughter? Is it an act of war if somebody kills your son or daughter? I'm telling you right now, somebody kills my son or daughter, it's an act of war because game on, bitch. And I am not going to sit around and do nothing when this has happened. Now, do I have the right to go and take somebody's life beforehand, preemptively? Oh, man, I think my neighbor over there, I think he's a creep. And I don't have anything to prove it, but you seen the way he looks at my daughter. Come on, man. You know it. You know he's going to do some bad things. Let's go dispose of that guy with unilateral intention before anything happens.
If you live in a world where there are rules, on top of it, even if you have proof that he's done something, you're not supposed to take it into your own matters. And that can just be a personal principle, but when it's written down on pieces of paper and there's Federalist Papers to back it up saying we're doing this for a reason because individual people kind of undo the principle of our rules here, I don't know, it seems even more concrete.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts going through my head right now, but yes, it's an act of war. Whenever you kill somebody who is not a citizen of your country on foreign sovereign soil, especially the Iraq International Airport, which I've flown in and out of quite a few times, I guess. Probably more than quite a few Americans anyway. Unbelievable to call that not an act of war. It's not an act of war. I hear that from this crowd all the time. It's an act of war, people. Sanctions are an act of war. Strikes like this are an act of war. The problem is they are unilateral act of war. They can take and endanger this entire damn country. Because let's say this. Let's say it is Iran and they have a sub off the coast of Georgia somewhere. And trust me, they've been practicing for a long time ionosphere-type detonations. And what would you do with an ionosphere-type detonation?
I don't know what that means.
Ionosphere is the sphere in the...
Is this the space between like space and our atmosphere?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's full of a bunch of what? Electrons.
Okay.
Now, when you detonate a nuclear bomb in the ionosphere, those electrons charge and now they fall. And when they fall to Earth, when they start to touch things like electronic equipment, they fry the circuit boards. Virtually sending everybody who is within that blast radius, which, let's face it, if you do it on the East Coast, you're taking out the entire East Coast. You do it over the central part of America, it takes out everything. Do it on the West Coast, it takes out the West Coast because what? We've got 3 power grids inside of the United States. We got East Coast, we got Texas, and we got West Coast. Of course, Texas has their own damn power grid. How archaic. Could be spending a lot of, better allocation of stolen money would be to reinforce that, but I digress. They have capabilities like this. To think that they don't, or to think that they can't do something like this, or somebody like China or Russia who sees this provocation and goes, God, those guys are out of damn control. Somebody or all of us, maybe we should do something about it. What's the best way to do something? Put these guys who are so damn comfortable and dependent on technology and power in their daily lives back in the Stone Age. It could happen like that. And this one action, This one action puts this entire damn country at risk for something like that.
Well, I think that we take a lot of actions that put our country at risk at many things all the time.
Yeah.
Not to diminish the importance of this action, but I think it happens all the time, and I think that's why I'm particularly grateful for people like Massey, who's very consistent about remembering the most important issue, and then people like Scott Horton and so forth, who make it their daily lives, because you never know which one it's going to be, right? There are some times when something like when the drone got shot down, I'm less scared now because there's been like a succession of things where I thought worse things would happen. You never know what it's going to be. In hindsight, we can see it's the Archduke Ferdinand kind of event, but you could have never predicted that because people get assassinated and things happen all the time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just get to a certain point in society and culture where people have just had enough.
I think there's that, and there's also just some coincidence of like what day it happens, what ability happens that day, what abilities one country has that day, what leader one person has that day, and that's based on their political system and so forth. And so there's so many ties. I think it's the same thing of, oh well, the attacks on the embassy happened because kind of all the stars aligned, because all the sides that used to be our allies are all hate us now. Like that's also just coincidence.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is you paint me a scenario, man, where the world doesn't see the United States like this. If I'm Russia, if I'm China, if I'm Iran, maybe North Korea, if I am a whole host of places within Central, South America that have been, invaded, occupied, terrorized, funded, you name it, man. If you know people and you've been there and you know the people that have been there doing these kind of things, man, we have been all over the world doing this kind of crap for way too damn long. And moments like this is where I sit there and go, Jesus Christ. We're going to go and assassinate basically a person who is in the upper echelon of the Iranian regime. We're going to blame it all on them. And at the same time, we're going to sit back and say we did this to avoid war. God dang, man. What a bald face. I mean, what kind of psychopath do you have to be to sit there and sell that to the American public?
I actually don't think you need to be that much of a psychopath. I think you just need to be, I'm sorry, I can't agree. I think you just need to be misinformed about what true strength looked like, and misinformed about history, and maybe not that bright. And on the other side, I think that while that's definitely possible, as I said, it's a coincidence. Like you don't know what the first domino can be extremely small comparatively.
Yeah, sure.
I think there is also, like I said before, a few episodes ago, I came up with this, I think, that because of like how global we are and how much we communicate, those type of events are less likely. Or potentially it puts off those type of events until they're bigger.
Yeah.
And the bigger ones are more likely at some point. It could be one or the other.
Well, I can tell you this. I don't think most people have any idea the danger, the just the absolute place that this puts the United States. And, ladies and gents, I hope to be wrong. I hope to be an alarmist. I hope to be one of those people that, they go, hey, you know what? Nothing ever happened because of this kind of stuff. Nothing ever happened. I hope that's what we get to say at the end of it. History, it's replete with this not being the case, though.
It's also replete with miracles, so who knows?
Yeah, you're right.
But to go to switch gears, but kind of stay in the same vein.
Yeah.
We've come to the conclusion basically this is a sensitive issue, right?
Sure.
This is probably making things considerably worse.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are not careful are making things worse, especially if they've got some kind of notoriety. There's this woman called Nancy Pelosi. She has a certain notoriety, unfortunately.
She's still alive.
And to say that she just throws caution to the wind, again, there's a reason. She's doing it because she's in the Democrat Party and Trump did this, so she has to push back. Mm-hmm. There are some people who honestly are saying, hey, we need to stop war, and who have been consistent. But the ones who have voted for war before, the ones who just funded the 19th year of the war, like Thomas Massey said, who then pretend that they're somewhat anti-war or want to stop war or probably aren't using those terms but are just criticizing Trump. Oh boy, I have some high-level.
Let's do it.
Discuss. So Nancy Pelosi said the Trump admin has conducted strikes in Iraq targeting high-level Iranian officials, military officials, and killing Iranian Quds Force commander Qasem Soleimani without an AUMF against Iran.
She's not wrong.
I mean, they have an AUMF for everything already, so it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
But that's her pushback.
Yeah. Well,
Thomas Massie had the best response ever.
Yeah, she can't. The problem is Democrats can't push back without throwing the last administration and the last Democrats under the bus as well.
But the hypocrisy. So
yeah, sure, of course.
So Thomas Massie said
it's on full display.
She should schedule a vote and revoke the 2002 congressional AUMF for war in Iraq and the open-ended 2001 AUMF for war on terror. But I won't hold my breath.
That's what I commented on.
As she's saying we need an AUMF,
yep.
The person who voted for 2 unconstitutional AUMFs to begin with, one which covers, under her logic, what just happened.
Yeah.
But if she's just opposing Trump, it doesn't even matter.
No.
I find that amazing.
Evil. I find it evil.
So then we've got people on another spectrum who I would say are being somewhat consistent, quite consistent. You've got Tulsi Gabbard, who said, we need to get out of Iraq and Syria now. That is the only way that we're going to prevent ourselves from being dragged into the quagmire deeper and deeper into war with Iran.
Huh.
And then you've got people who I don't know how to analyze. Bernie Sanders.
Oh, Bernie.
Has one post with 4 words that says, no war with Iran.
Great. Bernie's been pretty consistent about our foreign, entanglements and war, and I'll give him credit on that front, man.
I don't know if I give him credit. He never talks about it.
Yeah, he doesn't talk about it, but he's never voted for it. And I'll tell you what, for me, a lot of times actions speak louder than words. He's never voted for it.
He's running for president, though, and never talks about it.
Yeah, it's not. I like I said, man. I think a lot of these people, even Bernie Sanders, they can't openly go out there and lambaste Trump for what he did, because then they'd have to throw everybody in the past under the same bus, and they're not willing to do that.
And then Bernie shared Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's tweet, and for whatever reason, I think she has more consistency. She's been there less long, maybe, than Bernie. But she said, war is a class conflict too. The rich and powerful who open war escape the consequences of their decisions. It's not their children sent into the jaws of violence. It is often the vulnerable, the poor, and the working people who had little to no say in conflict who pay the price. And you and I could have said that exact thing. We probably wouldn't have talked about class because we don't.
I wish they would have said it during Barack Obama's presidency, but you know what? I'll take it now. The reemergence of the anti-war left is we've been sorely missing in this country for a long, long time. Long time. Glad to see it. And you know what? I don't care. If I get to agree with AOC, Tulsi, the rest of them who are calling for peace instead of provocation and escalation of war, where she's right, most of the time it's the poor and the ignorant who pay the ultimate sacrifice. It's not the rich. Sanctions don't affect the rich as they do the poor. War definitely does not. I mean, yeah, she's right on the damn money again.
So now to the Republicans, as I mentioned before, and then I'll finish with the Libertarians. The Republicans I mentioned before, both of them, it's Charlie Kirk and Mike Pence, and they both included in their warmongering stuff.
They get the same talking points from the same people.
Which there's a lot of them, and we've talked about most of them, but there's one that I found particularly like red flag, like, hey, here, attack this stupid point that I just made. And it is that Soleimani was responsible for 9/11 in some way, at least a little way, so they can just add 9/11 in there because there wasn't enough already. And
what a bunch of
if I was the person doing their PR, I would have said, hey, how about we cut so that we can have a little bit more credence? How about we cut right before you go to he was in part of 9/11? And this is, again, of all their arguments, which the arguments is that he was he's 500 to 1,000 American lives, which we explain. That's because they say that anybody who was killed by a Shia was obviously part, like Iran was backing them. There's many militias, local militias from all over. I was going to name like Syria, Iraq, but all over basically, and it's much more complicated than that. And then they talk about the embassy thing, which we already went through as well. And this one, man, their explanation for this one. So what's behind it, even though they don't explain it, is that the 9/11 attackers went through Iran. That's it. That is that's what they're basing their nugget of truth on.
Once upon a time, they stepped foot on Iranian sovereign soil.
They've used the term transmitting 9/11 terrorists through Afghanistan. So like helping, I guess.
Yeah.
Of course, none of these things have proof behind them, but even the explanation is, do you know, like, what are the other countries they went through? What about the country where of their nationality where they got a bunch of funds from, who are part of the official government?
Who we don't talk about, who are still redacted pieces of the 9/11 investigation that nobody ever gets to talk about?
That's a weird one.
Dude, Charlie Kirk, Mike Pence, the fact that 2001 is on the phone right now going, hey, listen, your talking points, they're going to fall flat on their face 20 years from now, people. Like Tower 7, the fact that it was Saudi Arabia over there, the fact that 9/11 seems more and more like a conspiracy to anybody who's got even an ounce of ability to search through Google. Like, you guys are now going back and going all the way to 2001, where our intelligence was crap in the first place. Then we went and invaded Iraq, which had nothing to do with any of this. Meanwhile, we just did, I don't know, what, $1 billion or $100 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia on top of it.
That was episode 97 as well, where you went through the history of BP and Iran and so forth, where I read the public White House official thing, which I think Trump wrote that one because it's so simplistic and just crazy, where he talks about how amazing this not nuclear arms, but this arms deal is, and how it's going to create so many jobs, and how it's so great, while knowing that all this is used in Yemen. I mean,
what a bunch of Charlie Kirk and Mike Pence. You're not real bright, are you?
They're holding water for, like, this is the blind allegiance thing.
Yeah, man.
If you're going to do blind allegiance, they do blind allegiance very well.
Yeah.
But then they become useful idiots.
And then here's the. I'll tell you, kind of the sad thing here.
It is very sad. I think we should try to deploy as much empathy as possible.
I think Charlie Kirk is an extremely bright kid. Okay, and I'm going to say he's a kid.
I don't think he's a kid.
Yeah.
He's like 30.
What?
Yeah.
I thought he was like 20 something.
No,
maybe barely 20 something.
No, he's older.
Google that real quick while I go on this rant. Charlie Kirk, you had so much damn potential, and the fact that your organization now kind of runs this parade around the country, doing conventions and things like that with a whole bunch of truth, and then delete, like, just untalked about truth that it kind of parallels and coexists, the omissions that you and Turning Point make these days, that your staff willingly overlook, has taken your platform from one of the most powerful platforms and opened it up to ridicule and to being, I don't know, admonished by people who are actually concerned about liberty and peace and life and property.
It's the same thing that happened to the Tea Party, except here we have one person at the top that can kind of
guide,
keep it going.
Yeah,
because the Tea Party kind of devolved because nobody was keeping it going after it.
Well, it lost control of everybody it elected.
Yeah, and lost its purpose. Like, It didn't have any purpose anymore.
And Debbie Dooley down here in Atlanta got co-opted into it as well. And I don't know if she just wasn't that bright or she was just pissed off in the very beginning. And no offense, Debbie. Hey, good job starting the Tea Party originally, but no follow-through whatsoever.
Well, I mean, her But the problem is that she's very inclined to doing the same kind of things. I mean,
sure she is.
She was on the floor of the Georgia State Convention once, when there was. I mean, it was one of the actions in my very early on political years that I thought was the coolest. Mm-hmm. Is somebody had put forth a resolution to say that Obama had gone to war illegally, right?
Yeah.
And we were just all so excited because, I mean, that's the Ron Paul people trying to within the Republicans who don't care as much about the foreign policy side. And Debbie Dooley went down there and she was like, whoa, hold on. If we do that, then that's going to show that our nominee Mitt Romney is kind of on board with the same thing, and that would be a little bit hypocritical. And like she argued, and it killed the resolution.
Yeah, I don't doubt it for half a second. Charlie Kirk.
I'll
Charlie
find
Kirk
that audio at some point.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk has taken his organization down a path that will not survive.
So this leads us to the libertarians, and it's not a direct quote. It's a statement that has been made by a lot of libertarians, and because I like to be contrarian, I have decided to push back against it, because just anything that's not true bothers me. And so the statement is made by a lot of libertarians, some who I listen to their podcasts all the time, and that this is the most impeachable offense. The left has talked about it. The libertarians love talking about it. And libertarians have been kind of split on what's happening. There's been some who have argued about property rights and how the embassy is property rights and how this is just a defense of property rights. There's been some who have just gone down the nationalistic kind of path of like, whoa, there's just too much fear here. This has to be done. There's been some who are playing on like the progressive side of like, we're just going to bash Trump and focus on Trump. And even though we focus on Trump, I hope we focus more on the principle of the matter than on the man himself. And I think that saying this is the most impeachable offense ever plays straight into the progressive hand of let's just focus on Trump. And the more important part, it ignores the truth, even if it's a small part of the truth. Here it happens to be a big part of the truth, that I think the most impeachable offense is Yemen.
Yeah.
This has happened. It's been 3 days. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it was a good thing. We just argued for 2 hours plus that this is
2.5 hours.
That this is a poor decision to be made for all the reasons that we went through. I'll try not to repeat myself. Yemen has been going on for Obama. It was picked up by Trump, and Trump not only continued it like he's continued a lot of things, he went gung-ho, did PR for Saudi Arabia, for God's sakes. As I just said, I read it on episode 97 about how awesome this was, and has whatever that is, like 900 plus days of supporting this happening.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So this might be a really bad thing to do, but the most impeachable offense in how bad it's been and how much evidence there is to convict, every single second that goes by is more evidence to convict. There's however many less seconds in the last 3 days that have passed than the war in Yemen. And for libertarians to not be as thoughtful and to jump on the excitement, and excitement might be a dirty word when we're talking about people losing their lives and potential more people losing their lives, but it is. Don't get into the excitement too much. I've gotten into the excitement too much. Okay, been all over Facebook, arguing with people, trying to have some light fun sometimes. I don't find that very attractive of some libertarians falling into that.
I don't either. I did call this a high crime. For the first.
Sure, I mean they're all high crimes, but it's not the most impeachable offense. Most means something. We specifically we call ourselves like autistic. Sometimes think words matter.
Yeah,
and
I'm not disagreeing with you by any stretch of the imagination. I am just pointing out the fact that this is not the most impeachable offense, right? Like. There are a lot before this that we've been railing against for a long time.
Well, there might not be that many.
Yeah.
But there are a few.
Yemen, mostly centered around war crime.
Yeah, I mean, everything else pales into comparison.
Sure. And for the right reason. But yeah.
Because human life matters.
Hey, Democrats, once again, if you're looking for real high crimes, here it is. It's on a silver platter for you. You can't do anything because you compromised your principles a long damn time ago when you let Barack Obama and the rest of them do the same damn thing. That's the problem.
And actually, when I talk about Yemen being the most impeachable offense, just talking about Saudi Arabia and the fact that Saudi Arabia actually has more ties to 9/11, if we're going to take the Pence and the Kirks seriously, well, that makes it even more of the more impeachable offense, because you could even argue that there's treason happening at some point.
Sure. Well, I mean, think about this. You just made a $1 billion sale of arms to a nation that helped attack us on 9/11. You want to talk about real treason? I don't know, man. Like, the fact that people can't just see this is clear as damn day at this point with the internet.
It's slightly more nuanced, but yeah, that if they're going to make the point, we get to make the point.
Yeah. Barack Obama, he funded and had trained. Well, I say funded. The Congress funded him. So I guess most of anybody who voted for that budget is treasonous in the first place. But they funded, trained, equipped, and then destroyed, basically Al-Qaeda, ISIS, or whatever it is, that was up there for a while. And now you've got, Trump going in and giving $1 billion worth of arms out of fiat currency, basically, to the Saudis, who funded and trained the 9/11 hijackers that, quote unquote, flew planes into the towers. Right? Like, this whole damn, it's just so obvious that they've lost control. I don't know, man. I'm getting worked up. I'm getting worked up.
Well, I think we can have some fun while knowing this is a serious subject and jump into the social media stuff. I think there'll be some levity there, and I think we could use it for the end of the conversation.
Yeah, because we only got about half an hour to roll through some comments and discussions.
Pick your favorite and start talking to them if you don't mind. I'm going to use the restroom as well.
Okay. One of the guys, man, Kevin, I'm not going to call out your last name, but it says you're buying into the false premise that this is represented a declaration of war. Also begs the question, what is war constitutionally in the world as it exists, by whose choice, and who gets to decide that this was a declaration of war, man? I think we've covered it ad nauseam on here, man, but this is what I see of people blindly defending President Trump. I just responded, this is an act of war by a president, could bring the whole country into a war. One man should never, and I need to caveat that, was never ever given that power, and the framers obviously rested that decision with the Congress alone. Alice, who is also just one of those people who is in the tank for Trump no matter what he does. It's OMG. POTUS did not declare war. As commander-in-chief, he legally can do this. Plus, he may engage for 60 days before going to Congress. Maybe you should take a deep breath and spread the truth. Alice, if you listen to this program, I hope you do. I hope you understand we've already laid out this whole case. The framers laid out this whole case. It couldn't be easier. He can't declare war. He can't take any offensive measures against any other sovereign nation, their people, their citizens, their assets, any of those things. He can't do it. It must go through Congress. Man, and then I've got some hate. And you know what? This is on my public page. So you know what, Floyd? If you're out there, man, this is you. Are you always this big of an idiot? Or just having a bad decade? Glad you lost. If this is what your district would have received, are you a Mitt Romney clone?
Okay, that's a weird one, because Mitt Romney would be totally for this war.
Yeah, he's a hawk, right?
So
he's a huge hawk.
So there's been an interesting mix of a few surprises of people I wouldn't have thought would support this war. Yeah. Some insults, some ignorance, and then some just weird ass, that's a weird comment.
Reed writes, as is typical, the liberals always try to blame Trump for what they actually do. What? Like, I don't even understand your comment. First of all, just because I disagree with Trump doesn't mean that I'm a liberal in the sense of progressive left.
I think that something that we might be missing is that when you're, man, I sound very judgmental, but when you're so bought into the left and right, you just make a bunch of assumptions in your brain about things. So they must be thinking, well, Obama also was doing all these wars, and so it's his fault, and so Trump is just trying to fix it, and that's why liberals are unhappy. I assume.
Yeah, I've got ridiculous comments by this guy used to be one of my neighbors, Rich. I say, help get rid of the religious fanatics in power by backing the Iranian people with power and force. Most of the current issues in the Middle East would be resolved. Yes, new ones will pop up, but the world will be a better place. It's not our place. It's not our place to go in there, take government extracted money from the American people, first and foremost, and apply it to a different country. Are you going to do China? Are you going to do Russia? Are you going to do every other country that we disagree with on this planet? Can't do it, man. We are not the world's policemen. We've been bled dry by a bunch of farmers in Afghanistan, for God's sakes, over the last 20 years, as was Russia, as was the Ottoman Empire back in the day. Everybody that goes into these situations that thinks that they can, change culture in other countries ends up radicalizing people there because we are the foreigners, and then they band together and they hate you and they want you dead. I get upset, man. I get really upset.
I understand.
That people just willy-nilly throw around the idea that we're going to go do things in other people's countries and it's not going to have any ramifications, or that it's going to be picture perfect. That's the whole lie of war. The Fox News propaganda crowd. You guys think that we're going to go to war, we're going to kill Khomeini, we're going to kill the whole snake, the head of the snake over there in Iran, and then victory, and yay, and everything's going to be glorious. That's not the way war works. War doesn't work that way, man. War is awful. It's messy. It's like AOC said, and I hate to even bring her up and quote her, but damn it.
I don't
she's
think
right.
you should hate that. I think she's right.
She's right in this case, is that it affects the poorest people in that nation. It affects a lot of the poorest people in our nation because a lot of them don't see any choice in going to trade schools and colleges, or don't know what the hell they want to do with their life. So they run off, they join the United States Marine Corps or something to the effect, and then they get sent off under false premises to serve America. No, you're serving American interest. You're serving global interests. You're serving people with billions and billions of dollars who lobby Congress so they can get their favorite people reelected. That's why a seat for like Senate costs $1 million to $2 million. That's why a seat
that's small
for Congress can cost $1 million. Like, that's the reason those people are there, to take these interests through money that's paid into these quote unquote representatives and send our men and women off to die. To be shot at, to be murdered. Under what premise is that ever a good idea? It's a rhetorical question, obviously. I just can't stand that people willy-nilly think that we're going to go to war, magical things are going to happen. These are all people that have never, ever seen combat.
You said it's a rhetorical question, but I think some people, unfortunately, especially with the incentives right now that are being pushed, that, hey, I have to support my side, I have to support my president, whatever it is, would answer, well, at the cost of defeating evil or something like that.
Is Bashar al-Assad still in power?
Yep.
Is he better off in power in his country than us being there killing and destroying every other town in his country?
If Syria was in in the state it was before the war in Syria started, there would be less dead people, yes.
Saddam Hussein?
Because I'm going slow because I don't want to predict the future, but because people can tear that down really easily. But if you just say, hey, what was happening in Iraq and in Syria before the war happened, like how many people were dying on a daily basis, it's very hard to ignore that it might have not been perfect. It might have not been great. I mean, and Syria is different. Syria would have been just so much better because it was a pretty secular society. But there were much less dead people. You can't ignore it. Much less displaced people. You can't ignore it.
Yeah.
It's not the perfect solution, but it's significantly better, and it's proof by history.
Yeah. This one lady who claims to have been a supporter at one point. Listen to this question, Banks.
Well, there's no reason to doubt her claim.
No, I don't doubt her, but I tell you, after going after Ron Freeman for being a guy who supports civil asset forfeiture, mass surveillance, and not coming down and saying, hey, listen, red flag laws are unconstitutional, after I started taking him to task, she jumped on the bandwagon of, oh, this guy's an awful person who's just, bitter because he lost an election. Trust me, I was bitter a long time before I lost an election. Her question is this. Shane, how many people did you kill when you were a Marine?
I thought that was an interesting question, actually.
Hey, I don't know. Who knows? I can tell you right now, I remember a lot of the close-up ones. It haunts me to this day. Why do you think I'm doing what I'm doing? because I don't want other men and women to have to go through that, to make recompense for being ignorant of not understanding the way war works. It sucks. I'm going to have to live with that the rest of my life, Carrie Hitch. This is a public page, so guess what? I'm calling you out. If I could go back and take it back and give those guys back their lives, I would. I've got to live with that for the rest of my life. This is the way I make recompense, is by educating and informing people the horrors of war. So I hope that's the answer you wanted. I hope that you hear this and you understand why I do this now. You probably don't listen to the show. I don't care. What is it? We are at 2 hours and 38 minutes. I'm going to write that down and I'm going to reply to her. Hey, listen here. 2:38, Carrie. There's your answer. Live with it every day, Carrie. And I think Banks can sit here and tell you, yeah, this is upsetting. Because I went over and killed some people, you think that it's justified? You think that more killing justifies my killing? Killing doesn't justify more killing. Especially when it was done for lies. Just bold-faced lies, man. How ignorant. Jesus Christ. What are we devolving to, America?
Well, so I thought it was an interesting question. I was going to mention to you, but I forgot, so I'm glad that you pointed it out. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, like the hope, because when people do horrible things, right? Mm-hmm. It brings them closer to understanding why they did the horrible thing. Because if you didn't do the horrible thing, you wouldn't know at all. And I think that while it's less horrible to point it out and all the insults and so forth, which I'm super sensitive, I said before, and so when somebody insults me, like it hurts my little feelings. And I think that's fine to say. Like it hurts my feelings. I'll deal with it. Like my actions aren't changed by it, but it does hurt my feelings. And so hurting people's feelings and not being thoughtful and throwing things out there, and maybe especially if you're going to ask a question that's so that's a serious question, right? I think there's a different way to approach it, maybe that takes people's feelings into consideration as well. But I think that whole conversation is a good thing because a lot of truth comes out because of it. The truth is that you have a lot of. You said you were bitter, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, so stop me when I say the wrong words. But you have a lot of you've thought a lot about the past, and you're trying to make recompense for it. And Carrie has probably a lot of anger, a lot of frustration. Part of that is probably due to making some poor decisions of being a little bit too having too much blind obedience, maybe without enough facts. And part of it is probably for jumping to conclusions and not being the most productive person online. Online, where I think we can have tons of productive conversations. I think all this in the end is good, and that's why I can I smile most of the days. And this is one of my favorite things to do because I love having the conversation. It makes me think. I come up with new ideas on the podcast all the time just because I get to bounce stuff. There it is, off of Shane. So I think it's all good in the end, and I'm very grateful for it.
I've got from Kevin. He's got a ton of articles on here trying to defend this particular move. One from Mark Levin.
What's the best article?
I haven't read all these, man, but I'll tell you.
What's the best headline?
Mark Levin responds to U.S. assassination of Qasem Soleimani. I'll read some of it, but I'll tell you right now, Levin is a coward, and he is a hawk. And he has never served. He has never put on, a uniform. He has never stood in front of people that want to kill him and had to fear for his life like that.
I think that's a point to point. I think that's something to point out, but he still gets to have an opinion.
Oh, he can have an opinion.
His opinion could be just as correct.
But I'll guarantee you right now, if I offered him a rifle and a bullet bouncer and said, go kill as many people as you can over there and do it, do it expeditiously, that guy he'd crap his pants, man. It's cowards like this that think that there's no cost. Who are you willing to sacrifice? People like, oh God, Mark Levin. Who are you willing to sacrifice? You got a son? You got a daughter? Which one? Pick one. Which one of those people are you willing to sacrifice? Because that's the game we're in. You're going to sacrifice people's lives. You're going to be that guy that goes up in uniform and tells his mom, his girlfriend, his wife, his kids that he's dead? Or maybe even worse yet, he'll never ever be the same person ever again. He's up at Walter Reed. Maybe he's brain dead. Maybe he's missing legs. Maybe he's missing all of his appendages. Maybe he's going to get addicted to painkillers, and then he's going to have to take constipation medicine because of the painkillers, and then he's going to feel like crap the rest of his life, however long that might be, and maybe he decides to end his life. You going to be that person, Mark Levin? Mark Levin, President Trump has now done what Obama was incapable of doing, killing two of the world's most treacherous terrorists, Soleimani, Baghdadi. So far, every Democrat running for president has condemned the president for taking out Soleimani after Quds mass killer mastermind the attack on the American embassy in Iraq. The Iranian regime killed American soldiers and the party of Benghazi. Carter and Obama and the Democrat leadership trashed President Trump for dealing with these terrorists. No, the president is not provoking war. The Iranian regime has committed numerous acts of war. No, the president is not escalating tensions. The Iranian regime is striking out in all directions against numerous countries. Imagine this terrorist regime with nuclear missiles. Obama gave them billions, and the Democrats want to turn on our president. I predict a political backlash against the Democrats by the American people. Then he hit the Democrats with more blah, 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 blistering statement, blah, 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 blah. The modern Democratic Party stands with Iran against America. There is no getting around it. Of course, they will take great offense at this observation, but just listen to and read the comments of its leadership. Iran attacks our embassy. Our commander-in-chief effectively responds in real time, and top Democrats trash our president. Indeed, much of the Democratic Party and Iranian propaganda sounds all too similar. Same with the Democratic Party press. Trump didn't confer with Congress. Congress has been on recess. Moreover, the House Intelligence Committee has spent months orchestrating a coup against our president rather than doing its job protecting the America from, among others, the terrorist regime in Iran. But a president is not required to alert Congress to a real-time defensive military action so Pelosi and her ilk can leak and put the military action at risk. These Democrats are undermining our security. We are attacked by the Iranian regime. See, this is the kind of fear-mongering spin crap that I can't stand out of people like Mark Levin, who always want to rush off to war, who think that the commander-in-chief can unilaterally do this kind of thing. And I guarantee you, if somebody like Barack Obama had done something like this, and I'm sure you could probably go back in history and just find
where Barack Obama did things like this.
Like he probably went after him. He probably didn't cite the Constitution because, once again, same as the Democrats, he'd have to go back to President Bush and everybody else before him and implicate them as people that are usurpers and unconstitutional as well. This is not a defense. Sitting there and saying that the Democrats suck and that they're aligned with Iran, that's not what we are saying.
Well, I think that
we're saying go through Congress
to defend the Democrats. No, the Democrats, as bad as they can be in many, many, many ways, often the same ways as the Republicans, they're not defending or in support of the bad guys in Iran in the same way that us making our arguments doesn't make us defending. Okay, there's almost nobody in the whole United States government who actually is supporting horrible mass murderers besides sometimes themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, Bernie Sanders isn't actually, he doesn't want to kill people, even though the consequences of his policies would kill people, himself. And doing that, the inflammatory thing is what leads people to insult their friends online for having a disagreement. Wow, it's it's quite crazy.
I got one more from a couple of guys.
Go ahead.
And this is on my personal page, but I'll tell you what, you guys ought to be absolutely ashamed of yourselves. Ron, I'm not going to mention your last name. There will never be a war with Iran for a host of reasons. For one, I'm sure Khomeini does not want a missile landing on his own head. This is what doesn't happen in war. Missiles don't land on dictators and mullahs and quote unquote the bad guys. Okay? They land on kids, they land on innocent men and women. Where their villages and their homes, even if it's a mud hut where they're eking out an existence in quagmires in Afghanistan or wherever else we find them on the planet, that's where it lands a lot of times. Because people take cover around innocents so that they won't get blown up. Trust me, it happens all the time. In about 5 minutes, we would destroy their entire oil fields and production. Now, of course, what in turn cause Iranians to turn on their religious leaders, causing the entire country to collapse? So now we're going to destroy one of their most valuable industries on top of it. Who does that hurt? It's going to hurt the people. It's not going to hurt the upper echelon. What are they going to do? They're just going to beat the lower echelon harder so that their life doesn't change. Then this guy, Ron, another Ron, weighs in, and it says something to the effect of, I say, let them turn and take out their leaders. Bombs away. I have responded, you all talk about innocent lives as if they were nothing, and it's disgusting. One man taking action to bring an entire country into a war was guarded against by the framers for very good reason. What sense does it make that one man could speak for 300 million? It's antithetical to the Constitution. This is heated. You want to talk about a tipping point maybe here in America. Maybe it's not an external war that we just need to be worried about here right now. I mean, really, we are talking about a time and a place where America, I don't think, has been more divided, man. I mean, we are. I don't agree. We are pretty damn divided right now. You're skeptically optimistic?
Always.
Okay.
Every day. And again, I'm grateful for these conversations. I'm lucky that I recognize a lot of the people who are talking. And even though I find some of what some of these people are saying disgusting, I find the consequences that they don't realize of their actions disgusting. I find some of the things unproductive and sad. I'm glad a lot of the conversation is happening. I think that some of the conversation, the ones that people who like to point at social media and say that it's the scourge of society, they like to point at the ones where, yeah, there's certainly some things here that are going to have negative effects, right? People who have just been as unproductive as possible. But for the most part, I think it is productive because I know some of these people. The Kevin guy you were talking about, like, he's like a really cool guy, even though he's highly wrong here.
Yeah.
And maybe next year down the road, he realizes that. Maybe he teaches me something that I don't understand. And there's so much conversation happening that I think it's pretty positive. There are ways to do this better, and I'm not like the number one authority on how to argue on Facebook better, but there were some examples. I just had it pulled up. Where'd it go? I'm trying to find Deborah's comment. There it is. So she said, Banks, I adore you, but the fact is we have an embassy there. All the wishing and pointing out past bads will not change it. We have Americans there, not put there by Trump, yet he is willing to protect them just as I would my children. Families and friends are praying daily for the protection of their loved ones stationed there. He answered that prayer when they were in need of protecting. We can agree, discuss, debate all day long our beliefs and why or why not. However, it is what it is, and I am thankful for he lit their asses up to protect our men and women, volunteering their lives to keep Americans safe from those types of people. I'll ask you, if Shane was there, would you still disagree with Trump's decision? I know I would be standing at the White House with pom-poms. And so the reason that I find that one's particularly productive is because we know each other and we're friends. She's one of my favorite people. The tone that she took with me and my understanding of that I can understand where probably a lot of other people who are not saying it in the same way are coming from, right? Mm-hmm. I find it very, very sad that that is the conclusion of very wonderful intentions, that she cares a lot about people, and finishing it with pointing out that she cares a hell lot about you because you're one of her favorite people. I
love her. And I'll answer the question for you. This strike, if I was still there, and for all the men and women that are there, has made their lives a different world today. They are on probably the highest alert possible right now. You want to talk about the guards, the rotations, just the entire threat posture in the entire region. It is elevated, and it's because now more people are activated than in the recent past. Minimum. Probably more so than 2006, 2007 timeframe when we were up in the green zone doing some things there. Iraq is now another hotbed. And it's this provocation has made the troops' lives more endangered than they have been in a long, long time. And I'm telling you right now, when 2003, 2004, 2005 rolled around, the years when I was there, 2003, later, 4 definitely, 5 for sure. Those years were like just driving down the road was dangerous. You don't hear about the IED attacks that you used to. You don't hear about, the V-beds, which are vehicle-borne explosives, the IEDs that they bury. That didn't happen. I guarantee you that's going to be on the rise again. All this provocation, the killing of this one man, is going to endanger more and more people who are in the service. Guaranteed.
I agree.
I've seen it firsthand. Anytime something like this happens, anytime some bigwig that's paraded through the streets of Islam, anytime they can fervor that kind of disruption, it always happens, man. Always.
So I think that's a great point. I think that there's another point that your principles shouldn't change based on circumstance. It doesn't mean that we can't acknowledge reality. And the reality is that sometimes when there's, and these circumstances don't actually exist, but when there's a one or the other choice, that there are some people that you would choose over other people, your children, your loved ones, and so forth. But overall, principles shouldn't be changed by circumstances. And there's a great analogy that Jordan Peterson came up with the other day, that he started out with a provocative statement, and the provocative statement was, you need to be willing to let your kids die. And the person who was doing the interview kind of got taken aback, just like I hope kind of that the same provocation works. I think the follow through is really important. And he said, well, the reason that you have to be willing to let your kids die is only if you care about certain principles and a certain morality, and you want to instill that morality and those principles and those values in them. Because if you believe in the principles, and he goes on to talk about the Judeo-Christian kind of Western principles there, if you believe in those principles and you want them to believe it as much as you believe it, and then you violate it, which we are kind of emotionally taken to violate it if we want to protect our children sometimes, right? Don't go out and like ride your bike, stay home, don't move away to college and so forth. But he's like, you'll be violating your own principles, and your kids will never know those same principles. If you really want them to know it, you have to let them. If they decide to go sign up in the military and you can't stop them somehow, you've got to let them do that. If when they're old enough to ride their bike down the road 2 miles to the store or something, or to meet their friends, you've got to let them, even though you've literally just increased through a power that you kind of had their chance of dying.
Yeah. And
as much as I understand where Deborah's coming from right there. Okay, if my sister was over there, that's the person I use always to try to center my principles. I'd be scared, like crazy. I was going to use some bad words there, but but I wouldn't want it to violate my principles.
Yeah, trust me.
Because then there are no principles, and principles when the times are easy and your kids are 1 year old and can hardly make it past like a few inches, like tall like wall, it doesn't matter.
Let me propose this to you too. People talk about ICBMs striking America and keeping other intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear type, missiles that can strike from around the world, right? Anyway, people will talk about this kind of stuff, keeping powers like this in check, right? The problem is the only people that have ever detonated a nuclear bomb in this world are the Americans, and we did twice on a civilian population. Okay, now ICBMs are tough. They're one of those things that most nations, even if they wanted them, can't build, can't fund, can't engineer, can't get to fly, can't get to detonate, can't get to where they would really, really hope they can get them. Okay, you know what aren't real hard, and what a lot of people have? Short-range regional missiles. Now, if Iran has nuclear capability or biological capability, which I guarantee you they do, and they want to launch against our assets in the region, quote unquote, which are everywhere, all they have to do is pick a target. Pick a target, launch it, and forget it. Our troops going to be safer?
Nope.
Our troops going to be safer when they have to respond after that? Are they going to be safer in Iran fighting a hot war? Because that's what happens, people. You don't just bomb and leave. That's not the American way. No, we're in empire. We go in, we take over by force, so we think we take over by force. We put in a puppet regime, and then we stick around to make sure that puppet does what we want. Those people are going to be safer in Iran once they're there?
You're saying, the last thing we have is space, and we're even going to,
now we're going to space.
Well, no, space, in length of,
sure.
We're here and they're there.
But I'm just saying.
So the last protection we have is that, we're just going to give it up. The best protection maybe is that, and we're just going to give it up.
Yeah, they used to talk about the oceans being the best buffer and why America would never be invaded.
Oceans have no purpose if you just move people across the way.
I had this discussion with Tom Fredericks. Tom, man, you're a very gracious man, and you're at least open-minded enough to have a conversation without dropping calling names and things like that, and really sincerely, asking questions. These are my concerns, and what do you have the answers to these things? In this thing, I think he says, has anyone considered this basically the authorization for military force? And this is kind of the last string that I'm going to go through, because believe it or not, Banks, we're right at about 3 hours already.
Wow.
I said, have you considered Article 5 in response to his authorization of military force? He says, I don't follow your posts. Your post was a criticism of no congressional act of war. Seems they did open the door in 2001, and it's still open. I said it's unconstitutional. They did. Also read Article 6, Section 2. All laws pursuant to the Constitution are notwithstanding, or all laws not pursuant are notwithstanding. The AUMF War Powers Act for this was for this exact narrative. One man has never been given the power to take or even approach getting America into war. He says, okay, so standing armies pursuant to the militia acts would similarly be deemed unconstitutional, but we have them as well and use them for a myriad of good works. You are a participant in such. Do you feel your service to this country did a disservice to the Constitution? Said, I serve the war machine and special interests. America is no freer for these conflicts. To the contrary, we are the most incarcerated people on the planet, thanks to the Patriot Act, NDAA, drug war, and government indoctrination system that has brainwashed everyone for 13 years to accept this unconstitutional BS. He says, why? And are we criticizing Trump's presidency here, or what the expectations of that office have become? I said I was ignorant and belt-fed how star-spangly awesome America is for 13 years. And I'll add to that another couple of years while I was in college, and then, obviously my indoctrination into the Marine Corps. I said I saw it up close, and how we were the monster, and it changed my perspective. I said, I have utter contempt for all but about 5 members of Congress and that have a constitutional voting record. He said, fair enough. So thoughts on standing armies, Air Force, Navy, hell, Space Force. I said, Tom, there are 500 million guns in America, a few 100 billion rounds. America couldn't take over a bunch of farmers in Afghanistan. What the hell is any other nation going to do to us? He says ICBM. And I responded, and I actually deleted my comment because I was in the heat of the moment. ICBMs, like I said before, intercontinental ballistic missiles. Do people have intercontinental ballistic missiles that could or would want to use them against the United States? Of course they do. Mutually assured destruction, obviously, MAD, which came out of the 80s in the arms race with Russia, was one of those things that proliferated the ability of mankind to wipe itself off the earth. And I said something to the effect of, and I've deleted it because I definitely don't really want it to happen, and I don't really mean it, is basically it would wipe off some cities, because basically they're going to destroy, they're going to go after mass populated areas, right? What are mass populated cities usually filled with?
People.
Yeah, but what kind of, like in America, what kind of, and I'm generalizing broadly here.
Lots of people?
Lots of people who are usually fairly liberal, right?
Oh, the bigger cities have more liberal people, sure.
Maybe less dangerous men, as we concluded in the beginning. Sure. Men and women, yeah, to a certain degree. So if a city is taken out, by an ICBM, or a couple cities are taken out by ICBMs, what do you think that does to America?
It's horrific. It probably engenders more war later on.
Sure. But it's not one of those things where I don't think anybody ever hits America like that. I don't see it. I don't see anybody striking New York or Atlanta. And if they do, that's when
they have before, so I don't.
Not with an ICBM.
But if they had the capability of ICBMs, wouldn't they have?
Yeah. So what he's doing, he's begging the question here, Banks, and this is the question that I wanted to pose to you: is they have ICBMs? How do you guard against ICBMs if you don't have standing armies? Because I contend we don't need them.
In this world today, I think it's probably kind of hard to argue. Well, I think it's possible to argue that you need some kind of standing army to defend yourself as part of the defense.
You think you do?
Potentially. Whether that army is private or not or so forth. I think one day there will be need for less armies. And I think as potentially, I'd love to know the number as a proportion of the population of the world, how many people are actively involved in defense of countries compared to previously. I would imagine it's less. And that is a good,
sure.
And so that is a good thing that actually would help optimistic people like me,
sure,
maybe bring other people on board and say, hey, it might look like it's really, really dire.
Yeah.
But society, the average person's average life, and how many of the people he knows is actively involved in defense is less. And that would, like, at some point, maybe there'll be 0 people.
You talk about like less than, we're talking about like less than 1%. Most people don't know people who are actual combat vets or anything like that.
Yeah. And even the proportion of people who are in like,
even in the service,
in supportive situations is probably less.
Yeah.
I mean, in lots of societies, everybody was involved in making sure that, I don't know, the barbaric people just on the other side of the river didn't come over and kill them.
I think, for a lot of reasons, but my main reason is I don't think America gets hit with an ICBM for one big reason and one big reason only.
Okay.
It's because of the response. And you don't have to have nuclear, you don't have to have any of that kind of stuff for a overwhelming, devastating response. When you have a country of 300 million people who are armed to the damn teeth, if they actually agree on something, like where they were struck first, and I'm not saying we're going to be struck first.
I get it.
I'm just saying, I think it's a gigantic and monstrous waste of money and wealth and resources and especially life to think that you need these things anymore.
Well, it's a point I made that if Trump, through the lens of going through congressional authorization, had actually made the right decision of appearing strong, right? Mm-hmm. If he had wanted to optimize that, he would have gone to Congress and gotten the authorization, and that would have actually had a little bit of moral backing as well. And I don't think he did that because, again, short-sighted and trying to be the tough guy instead of the strong man.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the people have kind of been a substitute for that because of how much they've supported him. And while all this is under a premise that I wish didn't exist, under the current premise, if it actually deters something, great.
Yeah.
Or not great, better than the alternative. I'll finish on two things.
Okay.
This is a response. How a lot of the conversation started mattered less to me. But this person started in a very forceful, would have never said it to my face in that fashion. And I think we both do things that we wouldn't say to people's faces. And I'd like to work on that personally.
I'd say anything. I actually try to make sure that whenever I respond to people online, it's as if they're standing right in front of me.
I'm not saying you don't. I don't mean to indict you completely, but
I'm pretty combative. I mean, I am.
You are, but I wish you would potentially be less.
Not my style.
And this is why. Like this
Sure.
this person said that I was just coming forward with a bunch of horse beep and
horse squeeze, as Boris used to call it.
When it's somebody who knows you and says it in that fashion, like I don't know, that's not something like it's aggressive, right?
Sure.
But I responded as calmly as I could. And then added like a little bit of vulnerability at the end, saying that, well, it would have been better if this had been able to be kind of civil. And the response wasn't great, but it was much more truthful than it had started out to be. It was much more thought out and just instead of just saying this is a bunch of horse manure. And it ended with something that you can work off of because, again, it's the truth. So I'll read it real fast. Banks, every aspect of the Constitution has been violated for the last 100 years of our dysfunctional, bloated federal government. Actually, that would be 244 years, but whatever. For Christ's sake, we haven't had a budget in 20 years because our government is being owned by special interests. Sure, it was a moral obligation to kill that son of a bee and hopefully many more like him. Not my favorite thought there. Far too many of our military have died due to inaction and political deadlock. Even more would die based on these actions. And here's where I think it ended on something that was more helpful. I'm not disagreeing with what the Constitution says in this case, but in the current state of politics, I side with moral action, and I trust this was warranted to protect lives. Why is that important? It's because at least somebody is being honest instead of trying to go around it in a different ways. That person at least took head on the truth and said, yeah, it's unconstitutional, but I think the Constitution basically is wrong there.
Yeah.
And that's a fine thing to do, but at least make that case and you can go from there. I think he said things that are the fact that he hopes that many more people die. I don't care if it's good people or bad people. And there's somebody who made a point earlier. I don't understand why the same people who were applauding Obama killing bin Laden can't applaud this. It might seem like I'm just, I don't know, a weak person, but I have no desire to applaud anybody's killing. I don't care if they're the worst person in the world.
Yep.
If they're alive and they're doing bad things, call them out all day long. As soon as they're dead, it's like I have nothing to say.
Sure.
But death is always bad.
Yeah. Revenge killing is not going to make you any friends in this world. And you had one more over there.
So I was just going to end on what I said at the very beginning, which is when does this end? And that is a quote from General Petraeus.
Yep.
And while he may not have been said it directly about America, he was talking about Iran. Like, when do their actions end? He was talking about all the things that they've done without mentioning the American stuff. But whatever. I think it is a pertinent question of it doesn't end if you don't stop defending death and war.
Yeah.
you can go to the fringe and say that it is necessary in certain points of life. But when you're clamoring for it, it will never end.
Yep. I agree with you, man. What an episode. This was cathartic. I needed to talk about this with somebody that would see not only what I was talking about, and you always challenge me on things. I can't tell you how much I appreciate this conversation. I feel like I can go have a beer now and kind of unplug for the rest of the weekend. But this has been amazing, man. And I'm telling you, there's a lot more to come. Unfortunately, with all of this, I don't think we're going to see a de-escalation. I hope. The last thing I'll say is about all of this, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, people. I don't know that most people say that. I think most people hope they're right. I hope I'm wrong. And with that, I hope peace is one of those things that comes from this. I hope, the region starts to stabilize. I hope something like that happens. I am not optimistic that it will.
I hope you're wrong about many things, including that last point. But I'm convinced you're right about the foundational stuff that I think that we agree on, that a lot of people agree on, and to its core, everybody agrees on.
Yep.
They're just not willing to be consistent about what we agree on.
Yep.
So your place for peace, liberty, and free markets. I hope you enjoyed the special 3+ hour show that we'll either cut in half or do one show. We haven't decided yet, but I kind of want to cut it in half. And if you want to support further conversation like this, that hopefully spreads peace around the world, you can do so at patreon.com/rebellionpod. You can also
get out there and give us some money, people. We need some money. We got it. We got some new digs. We're expanding. I'll tell you what. I've got people that are knocking down my door for advertisement. I think you have an announcement for.
So I made the announcement last time that rebellionpod.com is live. Our domain person is Hover, and they still haven't made the switch. They have told me to stop making updates to the website.
Stop making updates.
so that the linking pointing works.
Sure.
But I will post a link today in Facebook of the current temporary URL, so you can kind of see what it looks like. There's a page for the sponsors, a page for the producers, and you kind of can see the layout. It's pretty cool. I'm happy. The mobile version, the video is too big. I'm going to make it smaller. I just have to learn some more coding. So much coding.
Well, outside of that, we need some reviews. Go out there, give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. We'll read it here on the air. You can contact us if you want to get anything or bring anything to our attention for the show. I would love to do another listener-driven show anytime. So you can go to...
So I actually asked, and we have a bunch of listener questions that we haven't gotten to.
info@rebellionpod.com. Maybe that'll be our next show.
Cool.
We appreciate all of you guys interacting with us. I love the fact that once these things started on Facebook and the Rebellion, group or whatever, audience, people who are rebels, you guys came in there and cleaned house. I was so proud of the interactions that you guys had, because
Absolutely.
You're not sitting there throwing bombs in terms of calling names. What an outstanding group of people you are. I've got tears in my eyes because that's how awesome I think this audience is. Guys, we're growing. I've got people coming to me asking for sponsorships and things like that, and now I get to tell them, hey, yeah, bring it on. Let's go. And now to start to put a lot of that towards marketing and growing this thing, I think in 2020 you guys are going to see some things out of us that you've never seen before. I'm so excited to be part of this, that you guys have led us into this. I don't know what's the term we used in one of the letters, this misfit rebellious audience this is the crowd that we are so honored to be a part of. Thank you guys for being a voice for calm and peace and liberty and free markets, and man, just thank you guys all so much. I can't say it enough. But until next time, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Out there, I will try to get this show up before I leave tomorrow on business. And until next time, this is your place for peace, liberty, free markets.
Signing out from the bunker. Peace.
Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff.